Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and a tree I've had in my collection for over 4 years by now. It's this little portulacaria afra bonsai that I do enjoy a lot, that I've bought actually in this pot, but when I bought it, it was somehow I think it fell out or something at the store. The soil was all messed up, some roots exposed, so the first thing I did right away was repot it. And since then, so since almost 4 years ago, I have not repotted this tree. So it's definitely time to give this tree a new outlook on life, repot it. The soil I used back then, it was okay, I would say. I mean, the tree has survived since then, but it never fully thrived in this soil. It was mainly an organic mixture, some clay pebbles in, there's some inorganic parts to really loosen the soil a little bit, to give it enough aeration, to also make sure it's well draining. But I think it never fully took to it. So I also want to move this tree into a fully inorganic soil mixture. So that is the plan for today. And I would say without further ado, let's start doing this by actually taking out this tree. As it has been 4 years, I'm not even sure if I have wired this tree in, so let me check the bottom. It doesn't look like I see any wire here. It's probably not wired in, but it might adhere quite well here. I'm not really sure how the roots will look like on this tree, but it seems to hold quite well in here. So we'll take just some chopsticks and try to break off any roots that are clinging here to the side of the tree. I can really see it starting to all lift. So seems we do have some good root development in here, which of course is a good sign, but it also shows me already that I think the roots are a little bit congested in here. Let's see if we can really take all of them out here, if something is stuck here at the bottom of the pot. So it's starting to come loose. And there we go. A great root mass. We will start to clean off the soil now and then see if we also have to prune some of these roots, and then we get to repotting. You can see part of it is breaking away here, so there's at least not that many roots. Somehow on this side a little bit more soil. So here there has not been that much root growth. I think that was also where the old roots basically had broken off of this tree when I bought it 4 years ago. Of course, the soil is completely dry right now. It's always good when you repot to have a tree that is rather on the dry side. With portulacaria afra, of course, that goes quite easily as they tend to like it dry anyway. So normally also try to not, of course, have the roots exposed to the air for too long. I feel like with portulacaria afra probably we can get away with a couple of minutes here more than on the ficus, for example, because they are, as I said, dry anyway right now, those roots. As we talk here about a succulent, they store most of the water anyway for a long time in their leaves, also in those plump leaves you can see on this tree. So we can definitely continue working on this, also having it exposed on the air without having to worry too much. I do enjoy the root system I can see on this tree, a lot of fine feeder roots, but as I said, as I saw also right here, right now, there are some dead parts in here that I will definitely take a look at. And it seems to be a little bit unevenly spread, like the viability of the roots. So a lot here on this side, definitely a little bit less on this side, but they're coming along also. So I think that's most of the soil already. Let me see here, still if something is still a little bit netted up, but I think for the most part we have all the soil out. So let me get that out of the way and then we continue here. So now that we have enough space here again to work a little bit more on the tree, let me actually get it out of the way first and prepare the pot, because of course we need to prepare our pot that we're going to use. I will reuse the same pot because I saw a lot of the roots actually were no longer viable, so they were removed, and I think the size in general fits for the pot. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a piece of wire. I'm gonna turn around the pot, make sure the holes here are also cleaned out, and then we're just going to feed in this wire. I'm trying to make a bend from the length or the size that we're actually going to need to fit this wire through, and we fit it through. And what we still then gonna do is put some mesh in here. I normally tend to do this after I put in the wire because it's easier to then simply, I use like basically old netting from, yeah, like fruit nets and stuff like that, because it does work great as mesh. And I put this in simply after I have adjusted the wire because it goes easily on top then. And we bend this a little bit out so it's not in the way when we repot, and show you perfect netting in here also for the tree. Then we need our soil mixture. So as I mentioned, the goal for today is to actually use inorganic soil. So I have prepared some inorganic soil here. It's mainly perlite, different sorts of lava rock, so really fully inorganic. Most of my trees are in this mixture by now and they're doing very well. So I think this one will do so as well. I'm preparing a ground layer here, let this set a little bit. While we do this, let's still look a little bit at those roots here. I think most of the dead roots have already come off while working on it, but for example, something like this, we should still remove. So it's really the shells of old roots that are still on here that of course we can remove as they're no longer viable and we don't need those on this tree. Same here, you can see also untangling those roots a little bit, seeing if we also have to cut back some of those finer feeder roots, but I think those I would actually leave on because they all seem to be viable at this point. So let me go through here also a little bit, really looking at the little nooks and crannies of this tree if there's still something we need to remove. And I can feel that this root here is actually also dead, so we can remove this. It came off from the tree from up here. And underneath it seems to still all be good. Some more soil here in the way that we can get out. And I think that's all we have to do. So a very, very healthy root base, nice feeder roots, definitely something we can work with. So we position this now on the soil that we already put in here as a ground layer. Let's see if this tree fits in here. It does. I would again pot it basically in the same position I had it before because I was happy with this position. Now it is more about getting our wire. So I think that also allows us to actually position it a little bit more in this direction and really link it here with this bigger root. Hold it here in place. We come from this other side and let me see. Here we can also bring it over this root, but of course trying to not put it too strongly in here so the root still can increase in thickness without this tree somewhat being limited in its growth options. So we position it again, quite happy with it, and now we fill the rest of the pot with soil. Here. Of course, it's a big pot, so a lot of soil that will fit in here. We will see also in a second right now probably a lot of pockets still we have to fill. So for a ground layer that's enough, but what we have to do now is really make sure that the roots that are in here, that we have soil within those roots. So we take a little chopstick and we work in this soil. We work it underneath, we work it really underneath the bigger roots, the smaller roots, to make sure they all have soil covered in there where they can of course also then attach to in the future and grow nicely around it. So also down here, I can see here, especially underneath the tree, it's always good to really go in with the chopsticks. And when you feel like there's not really a lot of pressure against your chopstick, that means there is still enough space in here where the soil can go down. And you really will see it also going down. We continue doing this a little bit. And here we can see a lot of it now moving also in here. Very important to really go underneath the tree here. Then of course, as we have a lot of new space in here, we again fill this empty space with soil. So from this side, same thing we do from the other side, and I think we have just the right amount of soil prepared here. A little bit here, And spread this also around. And that already starts to take shape, I would say. Right now I covered a little bit too much of the root flare here, I think, so we'll take it a little bit back to also show those nice roots that this tree has, especially here in the Nebari, of course, then. And from that onwards, I think I am happy with how this tree turned out and how this repot turned out. So what's the plan now? Normally, especially with many of the Indoficus trees that I have, I would now go right away and water this. With succulents, you should not do this. You should, after you have repotted it, leave it alone for a couple of days, because the roots often can go somewhat dormant when you repot it. If I water this now, the water will sit in here for a very long time, and we might develop root rot, which of course with a succulent can go quite fast. So in order to not have this risk, I'm simply letting this tree now rest for a couple of days. And once I feel like it has settled in enough, and when I see that the leaves are starting to go a little bit, well, if it's easy to squish them, for example, this here, they look a little bit wrinkly, then I will water it. Until then, I know there's still enough water stored in these leaves anyway, so this tree is not going to dry out. And once they get wrinkly, then we water. So I will keep you updated, of course, hopefully on an increased health also in this tree in the future. I think the soil really was somewhat of a limiting factor. There was a lot of growth on the roots, but there were also somewhat a lot of dead roots in here, which probably the soil stayed moist for too long at certain times, which led to some parts of the roots dying back. So I think a repot can really rejuvenate this tree, give it a new boost of energy in the future that, of course, it will definitely benefit from. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. And if you enjoy my channel, of course, feel free to subscribe to it. Hopefully we'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care.